And let's now just review some of the other things that we just didn't have time to get to today, and it includes conversations about ethics reforms and also conversations about penalty enhancements. Let's start with penalty enhancements. A bill came up in the Illinois House yesterday. It's a Senate bill, I believe, that would actually level penalty enhancements on people who pet certain wildlife, like bears, for instance. And it would enhance the penalty and say people could go to jail if they violate the state law. Well, House Minority Leader Toni McCombie, she sounded off on this and wasn't too the priorities, so to speak, of the legislature in advancing such a measure. Here she is, sounding off a bit.
Of an animal. So can I assume that a Capuchin monkey, which is used with folks that have severe motor disabilities, that they're going to be allowed to continue to keep that animal? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But if it's my mother who has that animal, and I happen to pet that animal, is there any sort of penalty for me if I pet that animal?
You know, that is an excellent question, one that has not been brought up before, and I'm happy to look into that. The intention of the bill really is for the traveling zoos that put those kinds of animals on display and charge people to pet. It is not intended for somebody at their home using that.
Okay, well...
So again, that's the sponsor of the bill responding to House Minority Leader Toni McCombie about penalty enhancements for people who pet certain wildlife, like primates or bears. McCombie then talked about penalty enhancements, and anybody who's followed the legislature for a bit knows that penalty enhancements are one of those things that's kind of like, it's like lava. You don't touch it. The Statehouse, the Democrats, and the majority have typically been against enhancing penalties for a variety of things. Including, for instance, McCombie. She's had a measure for several years based off of a former DCFS employee, Pam Knight, being brutally beaten. She wants to see penalty enhancements for people who are found guilty of harming or brutally beating or killing a DCFS employee. That has not advanced. You have other measures that Republicans have brought forward for penalty enhancements that haven't advanced. But then Democrats, while they say they don't like penalty enhancements, they bring about bills like this that would have a penalty enhancement for somebody who pets a wild animal at a petting zoo, for instance. So obviously an interesting thing. But McCombie then goes into some of the history of enhanced penalties and where they're at in the state legislature.
But we don't believe in penalty enhancements in this House. So in the 101st, we're going to do 7 more, and we're going to have 30 penalty enhancements in this House. No. We're not going to support penalty enhancements in this House. So in the 102nd, we're going to do 11 more penalty enhancements. But where is Deidre Silas and where is Pam Knight? Their bills are killed because God forbid their penalty enhancements. But you pet a bear, you could go to jail.
So again, Toni McCombie raising issue with obviously what she sees as a problem with priorities when it comes to penalty enhancements. Not the only thing making headlines yesterday. You had ethics reforms being brought up by a former Illinois governor. Pat Quinn was on location. He, of course, became governor after Rod Blagojevich was impeached and removed from office in 2009. And he talked about how after he left office, they brought about a report to ensure that there were issues discussed as to what exactly can happen with ethics reforms.
It was a very good report. Unfortunately, not every single thing was adopted by the legislature, but quite a few good reforms were enacted, especially with respect to campaign finance reform, putting limits on contributions for the first time, definitely improving the access that people had to the Freedom of Information Act, making changes with respect to state procurement, on and on. And I think that underlines why anytime there is a crisis, an ethics crisis in state government and local government. There needs to be serious reform and also serious investigation and thinking by the General Assembly and by the governor to straighten things out.
So he says that after the ComEd 4 trial resulted in guilty verdicts for all involved, and you've got Mike Madigan facing trial next year in that case, he says it's time for the legislature to call a special session, or for the governor to call a special session. Again, here's former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn.
And I am filing a letter today with Governor Pritzker, as well as Senate President Don Harmon and the Speaker of the House, Emanuel Chris Welch, asking for that. Under the Illinois Constitution, the governor can call a special session of the General Assembly, or the two legislative leaders together can do so. And I think, frankly, they all should do it together, because I think it's very, very important in Illinois that the events of last week not be forgotten, not be postponed to the fall or some other time. They need to be addressed in a serious way. Indeed, the Senate President said there was gluttonous conduct, behavior on the part of bad people who are convicted of felonies in the course of the ComEd 4 trial. And I think it is important that the General Assembly, which can have a concurrent special session at the very same time it's conducting its business right now. Obviously, through the month of May, there must be a budget and other important reforms enacted. But I don't think we should let ethics go off into the wild blue yonder. I think it's important to take...
Quinn talking about the need for a special session, and I did reach out to both the governor's office and also the House Speaker's office and the Senate President's office for response. And the Senate President's office was the only one that got back to me, and they said that we appreciate Mr. Quinn's input and look forward to reviewing his letter. At the end of the day, the people in the ComEd 4 trial were convicted because what they did already, it's illegal. Senate President Harmon will continue to champion ethics. The point that he has been trying to drive home is that what we need in public service are good people focused on the state's welfare rather than their own self-interest. So that's the statement I got back from the Senate President's office. I have yet to hear back from the offices of the House Speaker or of the governor. But then in the House, they were looking to renominate the current legislative inspector general. And that's something that even Pat Quinn brought up. He raised a letter from the first inspector general, Tom Homer, talking about how on his way out, he urged for there to be significant reforms, including making sure that conflicts of interest kept people from voting for certain legislation. So on the House floor yesterday, they re-upped a resolution to keep the current inspector general in place, but State Representative Blaine Wilhauer asking what other types of ethics reforms they're ultimately going to see develop before the end of session.
You think that the current legislative inspector general should have subpoena power?
I rise today to reappoint Judge McCuskey, and as your colleague said, there could be further conversations later. But at this time, I'll just want to speak on the work that he's already done and ask for your vote to reappoint him.
Well, that's you didn't answer my question at
Exactly.
all. That's a complete dodge, and that's all we do
Not
around here. Now, when we talk about ethics reforms, when we talk about anti-corruption measures, it's always down the line. It's always down the line. When's it going to come time to actually do these things? We all know that what needs to be done. We know that this office is a paper tiger. The general knows it's a paper tiger. And I'm just giving you the opportunity right now to agree with all of these people. And as chairman of the Ethics and Elections Committee, there is no shortage of bills over here that give the legislative inspector general the independence to fight the rampant corruption in this body. And I'm just asking if you support that.
As the chair of the Legislative Ethics Commission, I stand with my colleagues to support the reappointment of Judge McCuskey on this resolution. What you are talking about is legislation in the here and now, we're speaking on this resolution. I ask for your vote, sir.
So again, what kinds of ethics reforms will we ultimately have? Unclear, with about, like 9 days of legislative session left. So we'll keep an eye on all of that. Be back with you on that tomorrow with any updates.